So 180K for a tutor to teach a 1-year-old baby. Not because the child was struggling, no, but they need to prepare him for elite spaces. Continuing the conversation we started in part 1. And if you have not watched part 1, please find the link to the video here. Go and watch it and then come back and let's get into why tutoring is such a big business in the UK. Welcome to Abroad Perspective. My name is Karen Ekwang. Here we talk about life abroad, we talk about mindset shifts, we talk about thriving abroad, not just living and surviving. And today we're looking through the lens of a parent as to whether you need to take your child on to give your child extra tuition or not, and whether the academic system here really prepares them as a child, as a third culture child, as a child living beyond borders, whether that prepares them for the future, prepares them for the careers, for the things they want to do later in life. Recently, I came across an advert that made me take a moment, made me pause. Just to introduce this tutoring so that you see how big it is. There was an advert in London looking for a private tutor, paying, hear this, 180,000 a year for a 1-year-old child, basically a baby. I looked at that advert and I was like, okay, maybe I should change careers or something. So 180K for a tutor to teach a 1-year-old baby. Not because the child was struggling, no, but they need to prepare him for elite spaces, for an elite future. The tutor was expected to shape his accent, his manners, his exposure before any other cultural bias could take hold. Basically, immerse him in the British and in the English culture. And the parallel is basically their kids getting onto nursery and reception who are not fully potty trained. And this one at 1 year old is already starting to be groomed to be immersed into the British culture and into the elite class. But anyway, that aside, private tutoring is big business. And it's mainly driven by competition to get into top schools and top universities. Some countries like China even banned it because of the level of competition it was creating, but it is reported to still be happening under the radar, like a shadow industry, because parents are really keen to give their children a bit of extra so that they can also get to the top. Here in the UK, it is estimated to be between a 7 to 8 billion business annually. That's just private tutoring. And I see a lot of it lately. I see so many ads on social media. I'm telling you, parents, especially people living with beyond borders, talk about it a lot. I rarely hear it from the locals, but people living beyond borders talk about it a lot. Now, when I was doing this research, what is driving this tutoring? One of the things I realized is inequalities exist. The truth is, inequalities exist. And coming from a third world country, coming from Kenya, you would think we're the ones who are disadvantaged, but there are also people who are disadvantaged here. The inequalities exist, and the statistics show that young people from disadvantaged backgrounds are 40% less likely to pass GCSE, English and math, than their better off peers. The other thing is, only 44% of pupils on free school meals pass their English and math GCSEs compared to 72% of other pupils. But the irony is, these are also the students who are least likely to receive private tutoring because it comes at a cost. Does private tutoring help? Definitely does. A report by Saturn Trust, 2023 report by the Saturn Trust reveals that private tutoring is at its highest level. This is the other thing. It's at its highest level post-COVID. And I don't know if you've been living in the UK before COVID and after COVID, please comment and tell me if private tutoring was really a thing before COVID or it's something that was accelerated by COVID. So after COVID, so post-COVID, 30% of young people aged between 11 and 16 received private tutoring, but before that it was 27%. So there was an increase in tutoring post-COVID. But one thing to note is the government also introduced a national tutoring program, which accelerated schools also prioritizing tutoring for their students, because some students and many students suffered during their performance was affected during COVID. So please tell me, I'm not sure. I haven't seen any statistics around private tutoring before COVID and after COVID, but let me know if you're a parent or you've been here long enough. Let me know if tutoring was accelerated by COVID. So, does tutoring help? Yes, it does. Studies have shown that low-cost tutoring can improve struggling pupils' maths progress by more than 3 months. A trial was done with students. This was done in school, a low-cost model where recent or training graduates trained students in math once a week. And after 3 months, these students who are trained compared to the students who are not trained were 3 months ahead in terms of their maths progress. So tutoring really does help. And parents who can afford will definitely get their children onto a tutoring program. The government is trying also to, through the national tutoring program, some schools are able to get kids onto tutoring based on this report for 2023. For me, as a parent who grew up in a very rigorous academic system, in a very competitive system, coming here, I find this system really relaxed. I find it flexible, less exam driven, and more on the progress of a child. And it can even look on face value less competitive. I personally prefer that it's relaxed and less exam driven, and there's a lot of independence for the child to choose and to grow and to choose the way they want to learn. For me, that part I like. But like I said, on face value, it looks relaxed, but really it is very competitive because there's a lot of competition for students to get into the top, like grammar schools. So there are private schools, if you can afford it, which are really expensive, you can take your child to private school. But then they're like grammar schools or well-performing state schools, and for your child to get in there, they really, really need to have a good grade or perform really well in year 6. The other thing is getting into the top universities. Universities like Oxford, where I want my daughter to go, universities like Cambridge, really competitive worldwide. So if you want your child to get in there, then they need to put in some extra effort. There's also an elitist kind of attitude towards these top schools and even some top careers like finance. There's some elitist or clique-ish kind of requirement to get in there. Like, for example, to be a prime minister, you need to have gone to Oxford. To get into some firms, you need to have gone to certain schools. And so getting your child into those schools is sort of giving them a head start. And tutoring is probably what gets your child there. So it becomes a way to secure opportunity, not just to support learning, which is why I say there's quite competition. It looks like it's not there, but it's there. Let's look at the cost a bit. The cost reality. I'll just give an example. Like Kumon is £65 a month per subject per child, and then you have an annual joining cost of maybe between around the same amount, between 60 to 70 pounds. I looked at Ant Learning. Ant Learning is at £134 a month for 6 months, plus an enrollment fee of £55. That's per subject per child. So that's primary. If you go into secondary, then it goes up to 247 £247 a month. No, if you go to 2 programs a month, is £247. 1 program a month, that's Ant Learning, that's £134 a month. That's one child. So if you have more, if you want more subjects, of course, it adds up. So to bring this discussion to a close, while I was doing my research, this is what I have learned. 1, inequalities exist. Low-income families across the divide are more likely to be disadvantaged when it comes to education. So inequalities exist, number one. Number two, there is stiff competition. There is stiff competition to get into top schools and to get into top universities. So if this is the path you want to take, and if this is the path your child wants to take, you need to recognize that there is stiff competition and you're going to have to put in the work and probably the money to be able to get there. The third thing I have learned, as people living beyond borders, most of us were brought up in an environment where academic excellence was everything. So there's also that mindset that we carry. And we're inclined to pass on this mindset of strict academic excellence and discipline. I mean, I have no qualms. You need to be disciplined and discipline to our children. There's also a real drive to get our children to succeed, because you talk to most people and they'll tell you they're here for their children. They're here because of their children. So they really, really want to see this child excel through the system so that they can have opportunities which probably you as a parent did not have. I've also learned, and like we have seen, there is a cost to it. So what can you realistically afford? Another lesson I have learned through this journey is sometimes your presence and simple, affordable tools are enough. To be honest, there's a plethora of resources online and everywhere. There are apps you can pay for that may not be as costly as a tuition if that's not what you want, or you don't want that level of structure, you want some flexibility. There's a lot. There's free library resources, there's books, there's different ways, but you need to invest your time. You need to invest your time and money, but you also need to invest your time. Even when you take up this tuition and this tutoring, you really need an investment of your time. And I think that is the most important. And especially in the foundation years, this is what I'm seeing as they grow to be more independent. You need to invest your time. There are free resources. Every time I walk into a functioning library, guys, I smile. Like, I just feel so enthusiastic about it because I can't remember the last time I saw a working library at home. But here we can go in and borrow books and come and read and return them, and their programs. So make use of all the resources around you. I'll just ask you, have you utilized all the resources around you? In the beginning, we were on Montessori, we were on Splash Learn, we were on a number of apps that helped her get to a certain point. And this is where I'm going to tell you, we enrolled onto Kumon. So we enrolled onto Kumon when she was, I think, about 4 or 5 years old. And I think she needs to improve on her reading. So we enrolled onto Kumon. That is what drove me. A friend introduced me, and I enrolled her onto Kumon, and we started doing it a few days a week. So the time commitment, and because of her age, I had to be there with her. So really, it helped her to a certain extent. We did it for a few months. I stopped it. We got out of it because for me, I took a step back and asked myself, why am I enrolling her onto this now, and does she need it? At the time, I felt like she needed to progress in her English and her learning, in her reading and her pronunciation. But then we had some challenges with the tutor, which is also really important for me. And I'm saying this is my personal experience. I don't think she went on well with the tutor. Um, there was a bit of confusion in pronunciation, number one. Number two, I don't think she was very professional as well, because sometimes she'd come in late, she would not communicate, so would be there waiting to join and all that. And I didn't feel like the assessments were really helping us. I was not getting back. I didn't feel like I'm getting value for money in terms of progress, in terms of the assessments they were doing for her at that age. So at that moment, I said, I'm going to stop, maybe get a different tutor, or just wait and see how she progresses without this. Because it felt like in school she's being taught one thing, and the tutor is teaching her another thing, and then the confusion there, and then add to the point of getting late, not being there on time, not communicating in time. So I just felt like this is not value for us at this moment, and that's why we stopped Kumon at that point. I'm still thinking about going back to it, especially for math, but this is what I've learned. So when we got off it, I took the time. I said, okay, let's read. We have books, let's read. Let's take other steps. And I took time. And these days we take 15 to 20 minutes a day after school to read. To read. So she reads her books, and she reads stories. To get books from the library, she reads them. And her reading has improved. Her pronunciation has improved. So that's why I'm saying it takes time. It takes your time as a parent and your investment as a parent. I did math for her as well. I'll confess I've not been the best at following up on math lately, but that's the next step we need to take. We had a board and we would put addition, subtraction, the basics, and her math improved. And her father would take time to also teach her, and her math improved. So that's why this tutoring also needs to be tailored to your child. This is a parent's perspective and based on what I've seen. So make sure you tailor this learning to your child's needs, their academic ability, their progress. Let it be to support learning. And for me, this is what I say for the foundation years. Let it be to support their learning. It should not be out of pressure. It should not be out of other external factors. Also look at your financial situation. Those are the things that should drive your decision. It should not be out of pressure or out of fear. Let it be driven by your child's needs and abilities. And I guess as they get older, the other thing I've also heard from many parents that it's important to lay the foundation really well when they're young, and then later they won't have to struggle with that. And one of the things her teachers also told us, which I felt was really candid advice, especially for math. They said right now they're trying to teach them math through stories so that they can learn the practical aspect of math, as opposed to just knowing this is plus this is this, and this minus this is this. So that when they get older and they get to the assessments at those levels, you remember the questions where we used to be asked, if you're driving a car from A to B at this speed, blah blah blah. Remember those questions where sometimes it was hard to apply the theory because you learned the math through theory. So that's just something I threw in there, but tailor it to your child's needs and abilities. And as they grow and whatever they want to pursue, then you tailor the tutoring to that. I don't think there's a right or wrong way. It's really what suits you, what suits your child, what suits your family. Are you tutoring? Are you not? What are your reasons not to? Let's share in the comments, and you might be able to help one other person. You might be able to ask your questions and maybe be helped as well. I would also like to hear a teacher's perspective. So if you're a teacher, if you're in the system, what do you think about extra tuition? What would you advise parents to do? And if you'd also like for us to have a conversation about it on this channel, please let me know in the comments and we can organize that. So guys, thank you. Thank you for watching. Remember to share your experience in the comments. It might help another parent to breathe easier. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, like, and share with the video with the rest of your family and friends.